My name is Jonathan Murphy, and today I'm going to be talking to you about heritage tourism, most specifically heritage tourism based out of Rome. So, what I'll be discussing today is what is heritage tourism and the purpose it serves. Basically, exactly what it says, what it is going to be, and what it serves within the community of Rome. I'm going to be talking about what attracts people to heritage tourism, basically what brings people in, what has people's interest within it. Heritage sites located within Rome, so of course we'll be talking about the Roman Colosseum, things like the baths of Rome, as well as a lot of the cathedrals in Rome, where Rome is a very religious city. And we're going to talk about the importance of preservation. With heritage tourism, there is a lot of importance revolving around preservation, where it is based on history. Preserving those histories remains is very important when it comes to this industry. We're also going to be talking about proposed tour packages. Basically some tour packages I've made up for Rome that could possibly be used. Some marketing strategies of those packages, and finally conclusion. So what is heritage tourism? Heritage tourism revolves around the history, culture, and experiences of the area. So it revolves around experiencing the places and basically the history behind them, experiencing the culture of the area both in the past and the present. And it's greatly revolving around the stories of the people within the area. So the preservation of the people as well is important when it comes to heritage tourism. Basically, it's understanding and taking part in all the experiences of everything that area has gone through, including, so for Rome, it'd be including things like experiencing the Roman gladiator days, experiencing the public bathhouses, and all the building of the cathedrals and what those cathedrals really stood for, and really understanding what the people of Rome were going through at the time, understanding their day-to-day life. So I'm going to now talk about what attracts people to heritage tourism. So heritage tourism is a very unique experience. You can't really get it anywhere else in the world other than that specific place. You can't take part in Roman heritage by going to, say, Japan. It's very specific to the place that you're going to, so it's an extremely unique experience. You can't experience exactly what Rome has been through or the history behind it just by reading it either. It's taking part in part of the culture of an area. So you get to understand both the past of Romans, understanding where they've come from, and then you also get to take part of the culture of the area. So taking part of like the local shops or seeing the local festivals, talking to the people of the area, and getting a real feel for what the stories are that they have. And a large part of heritage tourism as well is experiencing the glorious or exciting parts of history. I specifically say exciting because not all of it's glorious, but it is interesting for people. So things like gladiatorial battles would have been glorious for some, for the owners of the slaves, but for the slaves itself, it was really a dark part of history. And this would go the same for other areas as well in a lot of heritage tourism, which is why heritage tourism can sometimes be confused or integrated with other forms of tourism, but we'll go over that later in the assignment as well. So next I'm going to be talking about heritage sites within Rome. Most importantly, St. Peter's Cathedral, or rather St. Peter's Basilica. Now, I'm not going to be going over a lot of cathedrals because there are quite a few in Rome. One of the tour packages actually has between 5 and 10 cathedrals on it. But just go over basically what the significant importance of each of them is. St. Peter's Cathedral, as you can see on the left, has a lot of rather trophies, statues, or other art pieces within them. So basically, around 1612, the building was remade, or rather redesigned, by a lot of famous artists. And basically their art pieces are now hanging in the cathedral and represent artistic significance within the art community. Now, some people may be traveling here for religious purposes, but there's others that may be traveling for the artistic purposes, and that's where heritage tourism starts to come into play with that. Next, I'm going to be talking about the term de Caracalla. So this is the second largest Roman bathhouse that can be found within Rome. As you can see, it's largely deteriorated, but it gives you an idea for basically what the Romans' lifestyle was. This would be a place where people can go in and basically have baths. It'd be for a public place, so it'd be for low to medium income individuals within Rome. But traveling here gives you a really good idea of, one, the architecture that Rome was capable of, the large buildings at this, and the largeness of this building that would have been in its prime, as well as the kind of architecture that they would have built around, what they exactly built for their people. You can see it's a lot of these places are large open areas, and there's some segregation for the more probably prominent members of Rome, or the ones who are more middle class and can afford to pay more. So going to this place gets people a lot of information on Rome's backstory and how the people actually live day-to-day lives. And of course, we're going to be talking about the Roman Colosseum, one of the most significant places in Rome that people usually go to see, and one of the most widely known ones. This is where gladiators would fight for people's amusement and people to watch. They'd also have battles with wild animals in the area. And the significant importance around this is like today's Super Bowls or other large sporting events. It was built around basically calming the people's nerves of the area, so to get people's minds off other things. It's just a way for having people to relax. Unfortunately, unlike with our current day-to-day things, the participation in such events was not voluntary. It was mandatory by the slaves that were being trained for it. In this case, we really get an idea of what's around the Roman society and what the people's day-to-day life was like, as well as the day-to-day life of the slaves that were in that society. So a little bit of information on Rome's tourism. There's a lot of religious sections and buildings. There's many cathedrals within Rome, and they get a lot of religious travelers into Rome because of it. Again, this kind of cooperates with heritage tourism. There's a bit of an intersection between the two. Because the city is extremely religious. But with that city being extremely religious, there's also a large part of history behind it. And if people are not traveling strictly for studying the religion of the area and just actually studying to the history or want to take part of the history, they're actually traveling for heritage tourism. And along with this, you may find other things like dark tourism. Maybe there's some areas in Rome that be able to find dark tourism events, a lot of slave deaths or areas of war. But again, if someone's traveling for the specific purpose of taking part of the experience of an area, taking part of the history of an area, they're traveling for heritage tourism, and it could be argued that they're also traveling for these other areas of tourism as well. So next we're going to talk about the importance of preservation. So preservation is extremely important within the heritage tourism industry. We've talked about this before, but it has to do with the parts of history degrading over time and not being able to be used by future generations. Now, degradation is natural. It's going to happen, as you can see with these ruins here. This has degraded over time just from natural use. Increased degradation due to high travel is not, though. So with things like cathedrals, people traveling there constantly and having people in there going in, day out constantly, that increases the condensation within the cathedral. And what this can do is it can actually destroy the artworks within it. So the marbling on the walls or, say, paintings can start to peel and pull apart due to the increased condensation. So what some places have started to do is they've started to reduce the amount of people that are allowed to be in there per day. So say some place would get 6,000 people per day, now they're only allowing 1,000 people per day to come in. And this is to make sure that those artworks don't need to be redesigned or remade or restored in quicker amounts of time. It allows them to give them a bit more time, not to take away from the artwork. So that's the risk of high volume travel to an area. And doing this as well, in allowing things to be preserved and making sure that the preservation is being taken care of and we're taking parts in sustainable tourism methods, assures the future use of this place for future generations. So it allows historians to take a look at it, allows people to continue to travel the area and experience the area. And that's when a lot of the sustainability practices need to be in place. Things like not taking things from the location. So even taking things as small as a rock. If one person took a rock from every location, it would be drained within a couple of years. So we're going to talk about a few other methods of preservation that we've actually been talking about in class. Virtual reality integrated tourism being the biggest one that we're going to talk about. So virtual reality integration when it comes to heritage tourism can actually be extremely useful. So say you're going to the Roman Colosseum, you can actually design a virtual world for people to go into. And maybe this will be like a separate location just off of the site, or maybe it'll be a program you can pay to download. But basically what would happen is you can put on your virtual headset and walk into the middle of the Colosseum, having a Roman gladiator fighting right beside you while you look at all the citizens in the stand looking down on you. And this hasn't been developed yet, but it's a very possible adaptation to heritage tourism to ensure that people are able to preserve the area a bit more. So this way you're able to experience the area without actually having to go to the area or to take part in a lot of things around there. you'll still be able to see it from the outside and see parts of it. But this way you can actually take part of the inside without actually destroying any of it. So the biggest thing with this is creating possible leaps through time. It's actually creating experiences for you to experience yourself, which is a large part of heritage tourism. And the other thing it's going to do is lessen foot travel to the destination, so it's going to be able to keep experiences for longer periods of time. Maybe instead of 50 years longer we'll have the experience, we'll be able to have that for 150 years longer. So now I'm going to talk about some proposed packages I have for the heritage tourism industry within Rome. One of the things I had an idea for was a cathedral bus tour. There's a lot of cathedrals that are within a small area, maybe 10-15 minutes within driving distance of each other. And this would be like maybe a 3 or 4 hour tour that would take you to 5 or 10 different cathedrals. It's going to be the thing as well. In between, you could be able to explore local shops, go to like local food stands or local restaurants, something that is small that you can do in between these trips. As well as the big part of this is going to be learning about the religious history of Rome and how religion actually affected the Roman culture. That's where the part of heritage tourism is going to come into that. So the second one I had was the daily life of a Roman tour. Now this is largely concentrated on public services or things that Romans would do in their day-to-day life. So I'll be going to 2 different bathhouses in Rome. They're about 10 minutes driving distance in between. I'll be going to the Roman Colosseum, which is very close to these bathhouses as well. It's actually in between the 2 of them. And then a trip to the Roman Museum of Roads and Walls. So this would be a museum where basically you can see how roads were developed, the walls were developed of Rome, and what Rome's basically history behind all of it was. That's not as exciting part of the tour, but gives you a bit of an idea of the Romans' day-to-day life and how they developed their empire themselves. So now I'm going to talk about pricing. With the cathedral bus tours are pricing at about $135. This is covering the travel cost for the bus to be traveling with all the group members inside of it. It'll cover an informational tour guide who will also speak about the area, speak about the religion and how it affected the local area and how it affected the Roman Empire, as well as taking you all the different cathedrals for you to take pictures and get an idea of where these cathedrals came from. And it was also have a lunch or dinner in between, depending on the time of day that you were taking the tour. So with that, you'd be able to go to like local stalls or local restaurants to get a real feel for the Roman experience or even the current Roman culture experience. For the daily life of a Roman tour, I priced it had 2 different price settings. So I had a $95 self-directed pamphlet, which would have the entrance fees to all locations. Basically, tickets would be pre-purchased in that pamphlet. Also have a lot of information within that pamphlet, but it lets you self-direct yourself a little bit more without actually having an informational tour guide or having a car driving you. So with that, it's be $95. The informational tour guide would be $125, which is basically same as the cathedral bus tour above. It would be with an informational tour guide. It wouldn't have any lunch and dinner in between, but it would cover the travel costs and the entrance costs to all the places as well. And just that a little extra charge gives you a bit more information with the person who's more experienced with the Roman culture of the area. So now I want to talk about marketing strategies with all of them. With the cathedral bus tours, it's mainly marketed to religious tourists and, again, heritage tourists. With the cathedral bus tours, basically, it's going to be largely on the history of the area. It's not going to be, it's going to be for those who are more interested with the religious side of history. And it will still have to do with the local culture of the area, where we are going to be going to local shops or local restaurants to basically take part in those. We will still be seeing the local culture of the area, but it's going to be a major intersection between religious tourists and heritage tourists in this case. It's going to be emphasizing educational value, emphasizing on the understanding of how Rome was becoming created with this religion and how religion did affect it. And in that case, I'd also offer student discounts for school trips. So in this case, you could get like student bus trips to be coming along, and they'd have a bit of a discount in that case. For the daily life of a Roman tour, I wanted to make a lot of family activities for during the tour, maybe some little games that could be in the pamphlet for people to take their family on, or like little activities that kids could do, even like mock gladiator fights between the children. Again, it would be things with foam swords, or it would be very small, but it would be something that the family can enjoy while they're there. I'd be advertising the Airbnb Experiences website as well, including photography possibilities. So be explaining that you can book this experience beforehand. You can either do it yourself or go with a group, depending on what you want. And I believe that can reach out a larger group of people as well. Create advertisements mixing fun and history together. So basically taking the history of Rome and trying to make it into something fun that people want to understand. and want to take part in. And again, offer school discounts in this case, where it is taking part of history and is a very educational tour that could be taken care of. As well as for the family self-directed tours, I want to offer treasure hunts. These things would be things like finding certain locations that would give you a little bit snippet of history behind it, something that would be a bit more fun for the whole family to do together. So in conclusion, Rome is full of heritage tourism capabilities. It's a large part of Rome's tourism is heritage tourism. It has to do with the history behind it. It has to do with everything that's happened with Rome, as well as what's been brought to make Rome the way it is today, and the current culture that it inhabits. Heritage tourism is a very large part of Rome, and the reason behind this is because if you look at something like Canada, we've been founded for a little over a century, getting closer to 2 in about 40 years. But with Rome, you're looking back at dating back to 500 AD, and you have just that expansive history and expansive knowledge that's within Rome, and that's what's going to be driving the heritage tourism within that area. With all that knowledge and with all that history behind it, it's going to be bringing people to understand, or want to understand, want to take part in what's been happening over the last centuries there. And finally, for heritage tourism to survive, it has to be sustainable. If it's not sustainable tourism, it's just going to destroy all the heritage pieces. It's going to destroy all the artifacts, all the buildings, and in the end, you're not going to have anything left to study. It's just going to be the people in the local area. And even with sustainable tourism, you need to make the people happy, because if you're destroying the people's culture in the area, you're destroying the whole reason that the history is there. So yes, sustainable tourism is a large part of heritage tourism as well, and the two do often coincide with one another. So just here is my references as well. If you do have any questions, please feel free to contact me at any time. And thank you for taking time to look at this.